The summer's hottest concert series is back. Jazzin' at the Shed takes place every Wednesday night, now through September 14th at Shed Aquarium. Enjoy a night of live music from premier jazz musicians, breathtaking skyline views from Shed's lakeside terraces, food, drinks, 32,000 aquatic animals, and complete fireworks show. Tickets are on sale now at shedaquarium.org/jazzin. Become a member today and receive free admission. Jazzin' at the Shed is sponsored by Chase.
Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, folks. It's Chris Daly here. And as usual, we try to come to the Jamaican community and Caribbean community with interesting folks who are doing game-changing stuff within our community. And tonight we have none other than Richard Hugh Blackford. He's a man who is blessed with many talents. You may have known him as one of Jamaica's leading realism painters. You have folks coming from all around the globe to purchase this man's products. But he has many skills, as we said. Did you know that he's also a writer? We're going to be talking a little about that tonight with him. But right now he's actually migrated to the U.S., where he's tackling this idea of education and putting that in his portfolio of skills. So we'll be entering a wide-ranging conversation with him, and in particular, the core will be about his new dynamic book. To do the interview will be my partner, Janice Maxwell. Janice, take it away.
Well, thanks, Chris. Hey, Richard. How you doing?
Hey, Janice, how are you? I'm fabulous. And yourself?
I'm doing. It's Black History Month, so it's really apropos to have you, a distinguished Black Jamaican, just spreading some knowledge and giving us a taste of what you wrote in your awesome book, Top Ranking. So where did you discover you were gifted in such these artistic arenas?
Well, when did I discover that? I would say somewhere in my late teen years. I would have been in sixth form at Camperdown High School. I left Kingston College in 74, went to Camperdown in in the same year to the sixth form, and I kind of fell in love with the whole artistic flavor that Camperdown presented, particularly with the drama. I remember my first writing piece was a play I wrote for School's Drama Festival for Camperdown in 1975, and I guess it just continued thereafter. I was always an artist. Growing up, I started scribbling and drawing from around 7, 8 years old, and that just followed me. But unfortunately, I didn't take it with me to the tertiary level. I really did just high school art. But after high school, I just kept drawing and painting. And my writing skills, they're also untrained because I guess I fell in love too with books. Not only through high school, but my first job was at the library at Tomricum in Kingston, just immediately after high school, and that just opened this whole world of reading and literature, and I just took advantage of it.
Wow, that's awesome, especially when you mentioned Camperdown, because actually that was my very first time. My cousin attended Camperdown, and the very first time I ever saw a play, a live theater, was that I was spending the weekend with his family, with his grandma, and she took me to go see him perform. So tell us a little bit about your Jamaican roots. We know about Camperdown, but just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I grew up, I was born in Kingston, to what I call salt of the earth parents. Both my parents are working class people. My father was, God rest his soul, couldn't read a lick, and my mother was, just a little bit able to help herself, but she held that rod over us that we had to go to school, and I think that instilled in me You hear me?
Yeah, I said that worked out for you.
Yes, it worked out for me, I took that with me. I guess at the end of the day, I recognized that I would have been the first one in the entire family. All my generations before me who would have had a chance to go to high school, and I basically pushed that on. So I think my own personal thirst and thirst for knowledge, for education, drove that, and I also thought that the best way to demonstrate that education is to utilize it in a way that it can mean something to the people who follow you, and I will have to admit that has been my personal driving force.
And so you would say that was what nurtured your curiosity and development in the gift of painting with words? Would you say that?
Interesting. Yes, the short answer would be yes. Well, I left high school in '76 and I went to Tomricum, which was my first job. I worked as a library assistant, and one of the first things that struck me was here I was in a place where there were thousands of books. History was one of my preferred subjects, and interestingly, I wanted to be a lawyer. The University of the West Indies would not accept me at the time because I didn't have all the requisite A-levels. But going to work gave me a certain amount of freedom and independence. And working in a library where the books were free, I had open access. It opened me up, and I just never turned back. I read everything that I could get my hands on. But more importantly, I had a thirst for information about Jamaica, and this has followed me to this point, especially because I recognized afterwards that there wasn't a lot written about Jamaica. We have a lot of artists, and I will tell you that the artists that I pay most attention to would have been Barrington Watson and to a lesser extent Ken Abendana Spencer, who I believe had the greatest ability
writers?
to use. No, these people were artists. And,
I know, but I mean, what kind of artists?
These were all fine artists, painters, primarily.
Oh, painters. And, okay.
Yeah, Barrington Watson's son Basil and I were in the same class at high school at Kingston College, and Barrington was a natural. I should say that even before that, when I was in primary school, I met this guy, Ashton Janke, who was, in my opinion, a wizard with a pencil. And this guy was the one who really opened my eyes up to drawing and art in a serious way. But by the time I got to KC, met up with people like Basil Watson, and then started to look at the work that his own father was doing. And Basil came from an art family. His uncle, Osmond Watson, God rest his soul, was also another artistic genius out of Jamaica. And that was just a natural place for me. And I figured, I didn't follow it as a career because it would not put bread and butter on my table. And my mother wanted me to get out of school and go work anyway. So, but later in life, that was the direction I went.
I see. So, that gentleman, he was your role model for writing. Did you have any other writers?
Oh, as far as my role model for writing, interestingly, as far as Jamaican authors or West Indian authors were, V.S. Naipaul, Victor Naipaul. I remember reading A House for Mr. Biswas. V.S. Naipaul is Trinidad.
Yes. Yeah, I know. I read that.
House for Mr. Biswas was something that grabbed my attention. And another book was The Children of Sisyphus. That was... Is
that by Naipaul as well?
Yes, that was by Naipaul as well. And those two books grabbed my attention completely. And in the late years, I fell in love with Michael Manley's writing. He wrote a couple of books which kind of formed my own political consciousness. I helped frame that political consciousness.
Like
one was,
Blair?
no, Drumbler, I think, was written by his daughter. But he wrote The Politics Have Changed, Up the Down Escalator, and there are a couple of others. But those are the two that got my attention in those days. And I then realized that there was an opportunity for putting Caribbean work out. But more importantly, and especially as I've gotten to this stage in my life, I'm realizing that I have the information, I lived it, and the story that basically underlined my time as a Jamaican, the period I grew up in, not a lot is written on that. And so I have accepted it as my role, to not become imprisoned by the writings of foreigners who come to Jamaica and write about Jamaica, yet never experienced what transpired in Jamaica. Also, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
No, well, your recent work, Top Rankings, that's what motivated you to take to become active in the writing of that era, right?
Well, no,
tell us what motivated the creation and what takeaway you hope the reader would appreciate.
Top Rankings is the subject matter is about the origin and the development of crime and criminality in Jamaica. What I recognize as growing up in Jamaica is this connection between the social organization of the Jamaican society, and in particular the political influence that has on the society, and how the politics of Jamaica has served to create this huge divide that currently represents the Jamaican society. I maintain that there is a lot more to it. And in fact, when I started writing Top Rankings, it really was intended to be a historical document, because I was looking at this violent connection between the current Jamaicans, the Jamaicans of that period, and in particular the slaves who came to Jamaica in that slavery transit period. But as I got, the more I researched, is the more the period of 1944-45 up to 1970s really struck me, because while we had this tendency for aggression as Jamaicans, it was the political climate, the political environment that capitalized on that and basically caused us to turn inwards on each other and to turn against each other. I believe that we cannot discuss Jamaican social and Jamaican social side and Jamaican history without also recognizing the role that the United States played in undermining Jamaica's development in that period, because we went down the ideological divide in the late 1960s, 1970s, and that punished us and continues to punish us. I think we're still trying to get away from it, but we have been so tainted socially by the violence that it's very, very difficult. This whole business of benefits politics, it has been with us since 1945, and that's what we need to study.
The very fact that you have this top ranking in this novel format, I think will serve the public well, simply because it's fast-paced. It gets in and out of the material. I enjoyed reading this book, and like I said, it was fast-paced, and it did touch on the many aspects of Jamaica, which is appreciative, especially to people in the diaspora who left Jamaica at an early age and want to know a little bit about themselves, or even how or why their parents had to leave. And this is very explanatory to this book is very explanatory. It gives you so to have it in a novel form, I think it's much more attractive, opposed to having it in a historical thing, unless you were probably taking a class, and that would be a different mind frame. But you could read this, say, at home in your downtime, and you get the message across. So in addition to writing, you paint as a creative outlet. And so tell us about the development part of Richard.
Great question. I have been painting now for more than 35 years, but I've always as an amateur painter, if you will.
They're very professional. I thought they were very professional and aesthetically appealing. So
you're too kind.
You're doing a good job.
The truth be told, though, again, I think I mentioned earlier that I came under the influence of people like Barrington Watson, and later, as a youngster in high school, his son Basil, who is a tremendous artist. It was it would have been very difficult to survive in a classroom environment if you could not match strides with those guys, and so that helped. But I painted. Sorry.
No, I was just saying it's just so important to have the arts in schools because I live in Chicago, and one of the first things that they do is that they say they don't have any money, so we have to cut the art program in the schools, especially in the inner city, which is where a lot of your book, your novel, talks about the inner city communities. And so why do you feel that it's important, or why do you think it would be important to have the arts in the school, especially in the inner city communities like Jonestown, Trenchtown, as you mentioned in your novel?
Again, another great question. I personally believe that art basically is part of the socializing process, and regardless of what section of the art that the arts that we're looking at, whether it's writing, painting, dance, whatever. I think once you start to pull programs like that out of school, what you're really doing is diluting, if not destroying, the cultural framework that is our country. And if you have a people who you're trying to develop and you pull away that cultural cement, then the result, which is what we have now, of the decadence and the violence and the selfishness, is what is going to be the result.
The result. And so it's even more important. They pull it away from the economic, the depressed areas, but then they over finance or support the more upper people who are in a better socioeconomic. So even if they didn't have art in the school, those parents are wealthy enough to say, my kids are going to have violin lessons on the weekend. They won't have it in school, but I'll make sure they have a place, as opposed to, say, an inner city child who don't have those resources. Says, well, they can't afford piano on the weekend, so let me make sure that they have something during the week. And but speaking of school, you attended Mona campus. During the time, in your time, there was Walter Rodney's philosophy still resonating on the campus. And the reason why I say this is because you did mention him as a backdrop in your book. So you give us some insight to the interplay there.
Well, another great question. I think Walter Rodney's philosophy was one that resonated in Jamaica for a long time, because I think what Walter Rodney and the church represented in Jamaica at the time was a situation where basically dictated people's thinking, and that was the framework in the late 1960s and the very, very early 1970s. In 1972, when the Manley administration came into power, it basically empowered people to think independently, and there was at least an attempt at an embracing of more critical thinking and an opening of the politics of the day to the scrutiny and the critique of the average man. So yes, I thought that this was very, very important as part of the foundation of that novel, because it basically showed you the transition point of where we were socially in the 1950s, and how the upheaval, the global upheaval, social upheavals of the late 1960s were impacting Jamaica, and how the government of the day dealt with it. In fact, I would also tell you that this was a critical point to when the music in Jamaica was transiting not only from ska to rocksteady, but more importantly from rocksteady to reggae music, which was largely protest music of the period, because that was what was the underlining influences at the time.
Yes, I agree with you. So that's why you believe that Rodney's era was the genesis of, say, Garrison Pollock's, which still impacts Jamaica today, I think. And you think so?
Most definitely. In fact, Garrison politics has always been a feature of the Jamaican political framework. Garrison politics started as far back as the 1950s. And again, I think I attempted to deal with that in a very, very detailed way in that book. The clearing of Dongle, Smith Village in 1962-63, just after we became independent. That was where one particular political party really upped the ante in terms of benefits politics, and that became the bane of our society at the time. In fact, all of the problems we now have in terms of the negative socialization of Jamaica, and specifically Western Kingston, was based on that particular practice. And unless we get away from that kind of practice, we're never going to be able to curb or to get rid of the scourge of violence in Jamaica.
Okay. Well, your book covers many of these issues. It has love, it has family, it has the backdrop of Walter Rodney's philosophy. It's got a lot of things going on in that publication, and it's a nice quick read, and you learn something about Jamaica from a different perspective. So what is your perspective on further Jamaicans in the diaspora and those still on the island?
You know, I believe that countries don't fail. It is people that fail. And I believe that one of the things we need to do, especially those of us in the diaspora, is not see Jamaica and Jamaicans back at home as the beggy community that we're trying to do something for, but to see ourselves as part of the Jamaica, the broader Jamaica, and that what we do is that we come here as Jamaicans to broaden our own horizons, and by extension we should try to sort of take that back to Jamaica to see how much more we can help to develop our individual communities that we all sprang from, and to have that kind of influence within those smaller social groups, whether it is your past high school, primary school, whatever it is. That is the role I believe that we ought to be playing as Jamaicans, rather than trying to find political influence in Jamaica without having to run an electoral seat in the island. I believe that the diaspora is important, and I think that the work that is being conducted in the diaspora is also important. But I am not particularly comfortable with some of the attitudes that is expressed, as if you want to dictate to the people who live there. That I'm not in support of.
Okay, so do you have any parting wisdom?
Do I have? Parting words? First of all, I will encourage everybody.
Parting words.
Go out and get a copy of Top Rankings. It is available on Amazon.com. It is available on my website at richardhblackford.com, and from that website I'll get you an autographed copy mailed out to you. It is also available as downloads, and these downloads are cheaper. It's available as a PDF download for a fraction of the cost, and that is immediate. If you really want to know what is the origin of the top ranking persona that has colored Jamaican landscape over the last 30, 40 years, this is what I would call
that is the novel,
recommended reading.
Right. So to learn more about Jamaican diaspora, visit JamaicanDiaspora.com. To learn more about Chris Staley, visit MyHeartMemories.com. And, of course, to learn about Richard Blackford, visit RichardBlackford.com. Thank you, Richard. Bye now.
The summer's hottest concert series is back. Jazzin' at the Shed takes place every Wednesday night, now through September 14th at Shed Aquarium. Enjoy a night of live music from premier jazz musicians, breathtaking skyline views from Shed's lakeside terraces, food, drinks, 32,000 aquatic animals, and complete fireworks show. Tickets are on sale now at shedaquarium.org/jazzin. Become a member today and receive free admission. Jazzin' at the Shed is sponsored by Chase.